Good morning, today is the 18th of April 2016. My name is David Pengilly and I want to talk to you today about Brexit because I'm in favour of exiting, Britain exiting from Europe, and also the government's little booklet which they spent £7 million producing, and which, as far as I can see, is not really showing us the whole picture. So I want to tell you first of all that I used to be the chief executive of a European company. We had offices in the UK, France and Germany. I know a little bit about running businesses around Europe, but I don't want to make out that I'm an expert on international trade. And I want to tell you that nearly every business person that you ask who is based in Britain is going to say, I'm in favour of staying in Europe. And that is because it means that you and I, other people who are not in business in Europe, will be subsidising their efforts because they have some form of stability, and all those costs of being in Europe are borne by us, not by their business. So obviously they're going to say, yes, we're in favour. That doesn't mean that if we come out of Europe, we will still not be able to have open border trade with other European countries. Because that is exactly what we're going to have, and that is all we've ever wanted, isn't it? We don't want political integration. We don't want the same Prime Minister for Germany and France as for the UK, and it's pretty obvious to anyone who follows European affairs that that's how it's all going, farther and farther into the integration process. So anyway, I'm going to talk to you about this booklet. And before I do that, I'm going to ask you, why is it that you want out of Europe? Is it because there are too many immigrants in this country? Because if that is why you want out of Europe, that is not really to do with Brexit. It's to do with governmental controls, you know. Even when we weren't in Europe, we were letting in plenty of immigrants into this country. So why is it exactly that you want out? I know why I want out, yeah? I want to control our own politics, our own economics. I think we are better alone. I think we've got plenty of chance to have open border trade with America, with Canada, with Asia, with Australasia, with the whole of Europe. We don't have to be controlled and governed by European policies, directives, red tape. But I tell you, the reason I want out of Europe is because I still run a business in the UK and we are clogged up with bureaucracy. And I'm not sure that our government in this country wants a small bureaucracy. I think that all the main parties, or at least the two that are any good in this country, are all about big government. There's no difference between the two of them. But despite that, I want out of Europe, I want Brexit. And after that, I want small government. So if the Tories or the Labour Party won't give it, then we'll have to come up with another party. But today, anyway, I'm going to talk about this little booklet, which is why your government believes that voting to remain in the European Union is the best decision for the UK. Well, if you owned a wallpaper company like your Chancellor does, then maybe you might also be scared that costs would go up if you exited from Europe. That's Osborne and Little. George Osborne, he's an exporter, so he knows which side his bread is buttered. David Cameron, he wants big government, lots of power and importance for people like himself. So he wants to stay in Europe. But I want to show you something on the very first page of this booklet. Let's hope you can see this. It says, a stronger economy for Britain. And underneath here, it lists the main industries which Britain has that exports to Europe. Now, as you know, we are not good anymore at manufacturing in quantity and exporting to Europe. In fact, we have a balance of trade deficit with Europe as we do with China and the rest of the world. We are importing far more from them than they are importing from us. So if we leave Europe, they're not going to say, oh no, the rules are changing, because we will say, well, let's have the same then for your Mercedes, your BMW, your Porsche, even Bentley and Rolls-Royce. All controlled by the Germans. But anyway, let's have a look at what the government thinks that we are exporting to Europe. The first one on the list, their top entry, is aerospace. And the reason that aerospace is there is because we have a couple of big companies. And one is we are a part of Airbus, and the other one is we own British Aerospace. Now, those sorts of exports and joint ventures are very much embedded in Europe already. The manufacturing facilities are already in Europe. The trade is often in military aircraft with British Aerospace, and technology. Those things are unaffected by whether we stay in or out of Europe. Let me say that again. If the factory is operating in Europe, that is an export for us, but it's not closed down when we leave Europe. They have to do trade with companies that are based in their own country. That's just globalization. So aerospace, the top one on the list, is largely unaffected by Brexit. The second one, chemicals and pharmaceuticals. Now, in the mass market, we are not that good at exporting bulk chemicals because of the cost of exporting. They are normally produced locally, but specialist chemicals and pharmaceuticals, we are quite good at those value-added products, But these pharmaceutical companies are global entities once again. So, for example, the British, we had a big one which was called Wellcome Trust. That is no longer called Wellcome. It's part of a global conglomerate based in all those European countries. So none of those are affected by Brexit either. The third one on the list, which is 10 times bigger than all the others combined, is financial services. So what happens is, if I run a company in Germany and I want to export some goods to Malaysia, I go to the financial markets and I take maybe some loans, I might take some insurance. These are global products. It's nothing to do with borders. I just buy a policy. That's the financial industry. That is not governed by trade in Europe. In theory, they could say, oh, no, you can't deal with companies outside of Europe for those products. But that's just never going to happen. That's ridiculous, No one thinks in the financial centres of this world that is ever going to happen. So, I could go down these lists. I used to run an IT and telecoms company. You can't provide phone calls to Germany from the UK. If you're servicing German companies, you need a telecoms company in Germany. Now, British Telecom, they've got one over there. They're joint ventured with companies all over the world. That's not affected by coming out of Europe. There are one or two things here. Food manufacturing, there could be increased regulation for some of our manufacturers of specialist food products that we do export successfully to Europe, and transport as well. But I have to tell you, we are not good at transport. You've seen those Betz cargo lorries are all based in Poland and Germany. They are the massive companies in Europe. We are minnows. So, that is just going to be an infinitesimally small part of the British economy that's affected. Now I've just been through it in detail. That is page 1 of the government's booklet. As far as I'm concerned, that is a load of tosh. I am for exiting Europe because I want control in Britain. We're a fantastic nation. We don't need the Germans and the French, who are the only two other successful economies in Europe, telling us how to do it. We respect them. We don't necessarily share their beliefs in everything. So when they encourage 22 countries into Europe, most of whom don't meet the economic criteria for joining, and now there's a load of bad debt out there, I want to see them clear up that mess. And when they've cleared it up, then we can have another discussion. This is a 100-year project, and it's not something that I want to be part of. So I hope I've made my view clear. I could talk a lot more about this, about why Britain exiting Europe is an absolutely fantastic idea. I'll give you one more thing. I spend a lot of time in Northern Europe, and on those motorways coming east-west across Europe, those are the main arteries for trade into Western Europe. Those arteries are packed full of lorries from Poland, Germany and Eastern Europe. But you will hardly see a British lorry there. This is not a big decision for Europe. If 40 years after we entered Europe, we are still discussing why it may or may not be a good reason to be in Europe, obviously it is not a good reason. There's nothing strong out there. It works the same both ways. I know the Queen's against it. She wants out. I want out. There's a load of people who want out. And when the day comes, I promise you, we're coming out. So get ready. Thank you for listening.